Yo, you're watching the Screaming Fish here, people, and once again I'm here for you guys with yet another video, and this time, as you can tell by the clearly very obvious title at the bottom of the screen, we are taking a look at Justice League. And yes, as you can clearly tell by the time this video is uploaded, this review is for once somewhat on time. So yeah, I'm not reviewing it like a few years after its release, so yeah, good for you guys, But yeah, without further rambling and further ado, let's get on with my review of the latest and hopefully not terrible DC movie. This is a movie I've been waiting to see since I was 5 years old. Even though it wasn't announced back then, I was still excited by the idea of a movie like this where Superman, Batman, The Flash, and Wonder Woman are all in the same movie fighting together. It's just amazing to me. So you can imagine my reaction back then when it was announced that my dream would finally come true. As some of you may know, this movie does have a lot going for it. For starters, there's the fact that the director Zack Snyder stepped down from the movie due to a family tragedy, and Joss Whedon, who of course made The Avengers, was brought in to reshoot some scenes. And there's also the fact that it's got admittedly a very unfair burden of being just as successful as Wonder Woman, while at the same time being better than basically everything that came before Wonder Woman. Not to mention that it's one of the most anticipated superhero movies of all time, so it has a lot riding on it. Although in the past week or so it hasn't had a very good critical reception, not as bad as the critical reactions to Batman v Superman or Suicide Squad for that matter, but still not very good. However, now I have had the chance to see the movie and form my own opinion, so does Justice League live up to the hype, or do I agree with the critics? I do tend to agree with the critics in most cases, but this time, while I can see why someone would hate this movie, I really enjoyed it myself. Justice League was a really fun time in the cinema. It's not perfect by a long shot, but I would still say it's a blast. Going into this movie, I was worried that the film would suffer from somewhat of an identity crisis because technically it's being made by two different directors with two completely different filmmaking styles, but surprisingly, Justice League very much feels like it's being directed by one person. But with that said, this is probably the one film in his entire roster that doesn't feel like it's being made by Zack Snyder. There's still plenty of things in here that make it a Zack Snyder movie, like the film's color palette and cinematography, for example, but at the same time, the film feels very much like a Whedon film, particularly when you listen to the dialogue and the way the characters interact with each other. There's a lot of times where a character who you would expect to be a really serious and brooding character would say something really funny, and some may find that a bit off-putting, especially when it comes from someone like Batman, but I think that adds some humanity to these characters. Whenever someone like Batman would say something funny, it made me think there's a human behind that mask. But overall, I would say that Zack Snyder's style of filmmaking and Whedon's mesh together tremendously well. It's not easy to pick out a scene and just say, that's Whedon right there, or that's Snyder there, and the fact that it blends together so well is just brilliant. I also thought the film was a lot more tonally consistent than I thought it would be. It's nothing like Suicide Squad where it just jumps from something really dark to something really funny within a second. It had one tone throughout and it just stuck with it. That said, I would definitely say that it's the most light-hearted of the DCEU films, and I mean that in the best way. I don't typically care if a superhero movie is light or dark so long as it works in the film's favour, but here I would say it does, and a lot of the jokes, particularly those involving The Flash, who I'll talk more about later, really stick the landing. And going back to cinematography, one thing that Zack Snyder has always had a knack for is cinematography, and he really doesn't disappoint here. Justice League is a very pretty movie. I love the way everything is filmed, but I will admit, particularly towards the beginning of the film, some of the editing was very choppy. There's an action sequence in the beginning of the film that felt really choppy in the way it was executed, and that was largely due to the editing, and that's the problem I've had with most of the DCEU movies. But while in Justice League it wasn't as big of a problem as it was in those films, when the editing was bad, it was really noticeable. As for the actual Justice League team itself, I really liked the team. I thought the dynamic between them was spot on. The scenes where there was conflict between them, where the characters were disagreeing with each other, I thought was some of the best in the entire film. Having them have clashing ideologies and tension between them was just gold. I also thought the way these characters were introduced into this movie was awesome. I thought the way the Flash was introduced into this movie was particularly great. The Flash in general is great in this movie. Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, aka The Flash, is amazing in this movie. I thought his performance was very Barry Allen, and it reminded me a lot of the character from the comics and the TV show, and a lot of his jokes hit. I thought the Speed Force was very cool, and The Flash had some of the best action sequences in the entire film. I loved Wonder Woman in this movie. I loved her movie, and I thought she was just as good here as she was in that movie. I thought a lot of the conflict between her and Batman was very interesting, and I really enjoyed seeing her interact with the other members of the League. I liked Jason Momoa quite a bit as Aquaman. He was probably the most badass member of the Justice League. He had some very cool scenes, and he has an amazing action sequence near the end of the movie. Although I do wish they had done more with him as a character. He was certainly very likable and a lot of fun to watch, but his backstory was just non-existent. But for many people like myself, he was a show stealer. I get sad every time I hear rumours about Ben Affleck leaving the role of Batman because once again he absolutely kills it. I love Ben Affleck as Batman. He is one of my favourite actors to ever portray the character. Batman is on a path to redemption in this movie and he understands that he went too far last time. So he's trying to set things right, and that plot point is what made his journey in this movie all the more compelling. I actually liked Cyborg a lot more than I thought I would. I thought his character arc and reason for even joining the Justice League was very interesting. Some of his powers didn't really make sense to me at times, but overall I thought he was a very good character, and the performance by Ray Fisher was also very, very good. But while I did like the character, I just wish they had done more with him than just have him be the tech guy. His position on the team is basically the guy who interacts with things, and I just wish they had done more with that just to make it more interesting, but they didn't, so there you go. But with that said, when this team comes together to kick some ass, you really feel like the Justice League just happened, and that feeling as a longtime fan is one of the most satisfying feelings I have ever felt. I know, a lot of you are going to be wondering what I think of Superman in this movie. It's not a spoiler that he comes back in this film, everyone knew he was. He's even in a few of the posters. I'm not going to spoil how he returns in this movie, but what I will say is that this is the best Superman has ever been in these movies. Henry Cavill has finally managed to capture what makes Superman such a great character in the comics, and when he actually returns, it's so awesome. I will admit though, if like me you knew about the whole thing where they had to digitally remove Henry Cavill's mustache, then you'll be able to notice that in some shots you can tell he has a CGI upper lip. But I think had I not known they had to do it in order to film Superman scenes, it wouldn't have been as noticeable. Although my biggest gripe with Justice League is really the pacing. This movie was originally 2 hours and 45 minutes long, and then Warner Bros. Introduced this mandate that demanded this movie be just under 2 hours, and that can really hurt the film. A lot of scenes feel very rushed as a result, and you can tell that there's a lot of things they're trying to do, but they don't have enough time to do it, so you often find certain elements of the film getting bypassed just so they can get to the big, epic finale. The dramatic tension between the team was one of the best parts of the movie, but some of the time it gets glossed over so quickly, and it didn't leave too much of an impact. I also thought the story was a tad formulaic. It does feel like you're watching a basic superhero team-up movie at times, and it can be pretty predictable as a result. I also thought there was never a sense of danger in the film. One of the things that gave the Battle of New York in Avengers a really overwhelming sense of danger is that in between all the amazing action, the film would cut back to different people who were being terrorized by the Chitauri, and that created a sense of danger because we could actually see people were getting hurt and that people were actually dying. In Justice League, it keeps cutting back to just the one family, so you only get the sense that they're in danger, but you don't get the sense that anyone else is in danger because they're the only people that you see that are actually in danger, if that makes sense. But if I'm honest, the lack of a sense of danger in the movie does have something to do with the villain, Steppenwolf. I like Steppenwolf's design, and he has a fantastic action scene on Themyscira, but as a villain, he was very, very weak. His motivations for even trying to destroy Earth was very cliched, and his characterization just never went beyond some a-hole who wants to destroy the planet. I also thought that he just looked very, very fake in some scenes. There were a lot of scenes where he looks incredible, but in a lot of other scenes he just looks like such a CG monster that just doesn't blend well with the environments. And speaking of the CGI, it's a bit of a mixed bag if I'm honest. A lot of the time the CGI looks fantastic, particularly with the Speed Force, but other times the CGI just looks absolutely terrible and really cartoony and jumpy, which is kind of surprising considering how big the budget for this movie was. Some of the green screen in particular just looks so fake and jarring that it really did take me out of the film, but that doesn't mean it derails the action. The action sequences in Justice League are definitely one of its strong points. Like I said, any action scene to do with the Flash is amazing. For the most part, from an action standpoint, Justice League really excels in that department. I also thought the references to other comics and movies were handled a lot better here. They don't feel forced and they actually make sense and fit in with the plot somewhat, and I was glad to see that the movie wasn't packed with them, unlike Batman v Superman. Overall, I would say that Justice League was a really fun time in the cinema. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, and I don't think it's really anything groundbreaking, but I would definitely say that it's a step in the right direction for the DCEU, if not a complete course correction. But easily the biggest letdown of the film is the story. It is a pretty rushed film, and a lot of that is due to the mandate that Warner Bros. Put out, so if they announced an extended cut of the film, I would be interested in getting it in the hopes of getting a movie that still has everything I liked about it, but with a more developed story. The best thing about this movie, for me anyway, was the characters and the camaraderie between them, as well as their fantastic chemistry between each other. By the end of this movie, me and all my friends just had the biggest smiles on our faces, and I left this movie really wanting to see more from these characters. So with that said, Justice League gets a 7 out of 10. So guys, those are my thoughts on Justice League. I do hope you enjoyed this video. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but it's definitely among the better DC movies, and it was just a blast in the cinema. I had a great time watching Justice League, and I think you will too, which is why I'm going to recommend that you go see it now. Anyway, without further ado, once again, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't worry, I'm not clicking anymore, because I know that annoys people, because I'm genuinely known for annoying people. It's my job, even though I don't really get paid for it. But still, anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. So, yeah. Bye.